Hi, I'm James Barfield with your Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. And one of the main reasons for that, ladies and gentlemen, is because of the fact that on this channel, we talk about things most people won't touch. And tonight is going to be no different. Now, before I begin, let me say this to you. It is not my intention to offend anyone on this video. But it is my intention to do what I do best. And that is to tell the truth and tell it like I see it, regardless as to where the fault might lie. Now, a poll was conducted between March 1st and March the 10th. And people were asked, is America still the greatest country in the world? Now, surprisingly, most Americans no longer feel that the United States is the greatest country in the world. A majority of Americans do not view the United States as the world's greatest nation, as patriotism declines as one of the country's core values. Only 21% of Americans believe that the United States stands above all countries in the world, while 50% said America is one of the greatest countries in the world, along with some others. And 27% indicated that there are other countries better than the United States. And this is according to the results of a Wall Street Journal poll released on Monday. Now, the attitudes about America's standing in the world come as core values that once defined the country continue to decline. The poll found with many Americans indicating that patriotism is not as important of a value as it once was. Now, there's many reasons for that, ladies and gentlemen. Most of it is the result of what's happened in the United States over the last 7 years. Only 38% of Americans indicated that patriotism was a very important value to them, down from 70% when the poll first asked that question in 1998. Another 35% said patriotism was somewhat important to them, while 16% said it was not that important, and 11% indicated it was not important at all. Now, younger Americans were less likely to hold patriotism as an important value, with 36% of those between the ages of 18 to 29 indicated that it was very important to them personally, which stood in stark contrast to seniors over the age of 65, 59% of whom said patriotism was a very important value. Now, ladies and gentlemen, having said that, I want to take a few moments on this show and on this channel and point out to you why, in my view, America is no longer considered to be the greatest country in the world. Now, I've been saying for the last probably 20 years that America is going to hell in a handbasket. America is dropping like a rock in its moral values. It's dropping like a ton of rocks in its political values. It's dropping, it has dropped like a parachutist out of an airplane when it comes to America's race relationships. Now, let me give you a few reasons, in my opinion, why America has lost its way in the last 20 years. It is my view that you can't be the greatest country in the world when there is more hate than love. Can't happen. You cannot be the greatest country in the world when 1% of the population controls more wealth than the other 99% combined. Okay? It's not happening. You cannot be the greatest country in the world when one group of people want to keep their foot on the necks of the other groups of people in the United States. We've got a lot of learning to do. We've got a lot of correcting to do. We've made an awful lot of mistakes in the last 20 to 30 to 40 years, ladies and gentlemen, that has taken us down politically, racially, economically. After all, look at how many goods are imported into the United States for United States consumption. You cannot be the greatest country in the world when you're buying 90% of your products from other nations to import into the country and you're exporting almost nothing. You cannot be the greatest country in the world when your manufacturing base is down to probably 20, 25%. Everything else you're importing into this country. You cannot be the greatest country in the world when that happens. Now, you cannot be the greatest country in the world when the church is closing more doors than it is opening. You heard me right. More churches in the United States are closing their doors than are opening doors. Okay? You cannot be the greatest country in the world when jails and prisons are thriving while hospitals are closing. You hear that? Now, you cannot be the greatest country in the world when corrupt and crooked politicians run amok and don't stand for anything. America's politicians are the most bought and paid for politicians in the world. The large multinational corporations, the pharmaceutical companies, the tobacco companies, the oil companies, okay? Those people own our politics and the gun industry. Don't let me leave that one out. Those people own and control most of our politicians, especially on the right, the Republicans. And these are the very people that don't stand for anything. These are the people that don't put forth any ideas, any agendas, anything to help and enhance the lifestyle of the American public. Everything they do, they're controlled, and they do it to favor these multinational companies, okay? And the big millionaire and billionaire donors. And that's who they cater to. The little guy, we're nothing but pawns in this world for politicians. Now, you cannot be the greatest country in the world when business executives compete to be the richest group in the country while the workers that they employ live on poverty wages. Now, let me repeat that. You can never be the greatest country in the world when a small select group of business executives compete to be the richest group in the world, while the workers whom they employ live in poverty and work for poverty wages. No, that's why we don't have a middle class any longer, folks. The politicians have such greed for themselves and their little 1% group that they've taken from the poor and given to the rich. And that's why we have two classes. You're either rich or you're poor, okay? Now, you cannot be the greatest country in the world when it's all about me and to hell with everybody else. And that's the attitude that the people with money in this country They are so greedy, so greedy. They want all of the pie and don't want to share it with anybody else outside that little group. Okay? Now, you cannot be the greatest country in the world when you want to hide your dirty racist history from the rest of the world. And that's where we're at in this country. They don't want to talk about the dark side of history. That's why they're banning everything. They're banning everything from the schools. Okay? They're banning the books. They're banning from what the teachers can teach. They falsely claim that public schools are teaching critical race theory. That's a lie. There's no public school in America that I know of, and I'm sure most of you know of, that teaches critical race theory. Critical race theory is taught and used in our colleges, and rightfully so. This country has never talked fairly about the good and the bad of our past history. You want to sweep it under the rug. You want to hide that part, the dark part. You don't want people to talk about it. I want you to think about Tulsa, Oklahoma, Wall Street, Black Wall Street. After that was destroyed by right-wing whites and white supremacists, the victims, survivors, were told, don't you talk about this. Don't you dare talk about this. And that is why so many people, right even in Tulsa, never knew about that part of history. Okay? And I could go on and on about this. Now, you know, I want to say another thing. We've got a problem with greed in this country. Money has become the root of all evil. And I want you to think about this. Money, as we've known for a long, long time, has corrupted many of our politicians. But one thing we don't recognize and don't talk about in this country of America is that money has corrupted many of our religious leaders. It has corrupted almost all of our civil rights groups and civil rights leaders. It has corrupted many of our civic organizations. It has corrupted many organizations who once had a mission of standing up, speaking out for, and representing the voiceless in this country, the poor in this country, the hungry in this country, the homeless in this country. No more. No more. You don't hear from those people. Very seldom. So you see, all of these things combined, ladies and gentlemen, explain why the United States is just another country. It is no longer morally, economically equal to the United States of 20, 30, 40 years ago. And people recognize it. The United States, through its actions, and it's not a dictatorship, but you would think it would be so because of the fact that the voices of most Americans in view of everything I just told you, remain silent. So they're allowing, through their silence, to allow America to continue to decline in moral leadership, in religious leadership, in economic leadership, in manufacturing leadership. All of that has combined to bring America to its knees almost. And I would suggest that if this trend continues in the next 20 years, ladies and gentlemen, the educational system is going to become one of the worst in the world as compared to one of the best in the world 40 years ago. Economically, America is going to continue in its economic decline, manufacturing less and less in this country. Law enforcement in this country is totally out of control. Today, many law enforcement departments offer two kinds of law: serve and protect one side of town, beat, shoot, and murder segments of the other side of town with little to few to no consequences. You cannot be the greatest country in the world when that is how you treat tax-paying, law-abiding citizens in what should be and once was considered by most Americans the greatest country in the world. You know, folks, I want to say one thing and I want to close. In 1965, I'm reminded of a great late gospel singer by the name of Mahalia Jackson. And I want to tell you that Mahalia Jackson had one of the greatest hits and most meaningful songs in recent memory. And it went like this. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing there is too little of. That was true in 1965, and that is true in 2023. Let's learn to love each other. Let's learn to do our part not to bring this country down to its knees, but to lift this country up and unite together and rule out the division that the politicians are trying to get us to hate each other. And they forget about you. They take you for granted. Ladies and gentlemen, we're better than that. We can do better, but it's up to us what happens. Love, sweet love. That's what the world needs. I'm James Barfield, and I'm out.